You're listening to In Healthy Company with Dr. Tim Stevenson. In this podcast, we're all about mental health and general well-being. We'll be interviewing guests and providing a safe space for them to discuss any mental health issues. For me, holistic health is far more than just not being sick. Please remember we're unable to give health advice on an individual basis. However, please do feel free to email us with your issues at wellbeing@thehealthycompany.com, and we may deal with them on the show. I've been looking forward to being in a healthy company with Max Longhin, an old friend of mine, who's a flight service manager on a well-known international airline, and he is a very interesting guy. He's just interesting to talk to all the time, but I thought that his Buddhist approach to life, and indeed his Buddhist faith, was an interesting area to explore and to take forward some of the mindfulness techniques and the mindfulness thoughts that I use in both my own life and when I'm trying to help others. Thanks for joining us on this programme where I'm in healthy company with Max Longhin, an old, not as old as me, friend of mine from my time at Virgin Atlantic. I'd known Max for many years, but really got to know him for the lovely guy he is on a Virgin Charity cycle trip to Rajasthan and India, and later to South Africa, where my wife Jackie and I met his husband Antonio. And I didn't just want to chat to Max about old time's sake or indeed work at Virgin, but I wanted to chat to Max about his Buddhist beliefs and how he approaches things. And very much of In Healthy Company is about mindfulness and how we can talk to ourselves and talk to others. So I'm just, wanted to just chat through with you what made you become a Buddhist, etc. What made you think that to explore it. And then I also just wanted to explore, I've spoken to you before about it, your childhood and school years and college years in South Africa and apartheid and anti-apartheid and all that. So enough from me. The lovely Max.
Hello. So good to see you again, Tim.
Thanks,
It's been a long time, and I really feel honoured that you've invited me.
Thank you. You're such a positive person, and you came straight to mind whenever I was thinking about the power of positivity, and I've never heard anything negative coming from you. I'm sure there's something.
I'm sure there must be.
But I'm sure we'll get something as we go along here. But tell me a wee bit about your childhood in South Africa.
It's how much time have we got?
Yeah, we got as long as you want.
I'm Italian.
Yeah.
Both my parents are Italian. We're from the Venetian province. And in the 60s, my father was invited to move to South Africa as a civil engineer. And so off we went. And so I spent about 17 years in South Africa. So I did all my school there. And I think I was very fortunate to be exposed to a wonderful country like South Africa, so multicultural. And then when I was a teenager, we moved back to Italy. I spent 4 years in Italy, and then I missed the English language, so I moved to London.
Gosh.
And I've been in the UK ever since.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And you've been flying for
29 years. I can't believe it.
I know.
My earliest memories of flying feel like it was only yesterday.
Yeah.
So,
I know. That's age. Just wait till you get to my age.
I'm just a few years behind you, so don't worry.
I just also wanted to look at, we've spoken before about your time in South Africa and the apartheid, and we're going to be talking to Captain Chris Hall, who's a mutual friend of ours, about that as well. But I also was interested in, what it felt like back then and what it felt like growing up there and with your sexuality there, and whether there were any difficulties there compared to here, or and what your anti-apartheid stance, how did it affect you? How did it affect your life?
I think a common misconception of a lot of people in the West or outside of South Africa is that when in the era of apartheid in South Africa, a lot of people thought that all whites were racist, and agreed with, and some people might say, well, if you stayed there, you kind of subconsciously agreed with it. But there were a big part of the community were actually so against it, and they felt that it was better to actually stay there and make a difference rather than deserting the place. So I was very lucky. First of all, coming from an Italian family where that kind of racism you can't judge somebody by the color of their skin. So we were brought up playing with all kinds of kids. So I remember just across the hill from where we lived was the Indian suburb, and then 2 hills along was the black suburb. And it wasn't as squeaky clean as that. I mean, it was these people lived in poverty, and but as children, you don't see that. You just see, these are my friends, and let's play this and play that, hopscotch, whatever. And that's what we did. And our parents never ever tried to get in the way of that. So I think what I learned from that is, if you are, I think a lot of ingrained behaviors stem from your childhood, and I was lucky enough to have this open-minded way of thinking.
A nice grain to be ingrained in, yes. To have an open mind.
Yes, yeah. I mean, my first language, is Italian, but I learned Zulu at the same time as I learned English. Yeah. So, and I still speak a little bit of it. I've forgotten a lot of it, but it just goes to show, when you're 2 years old, you just pick up languages. No one stops you. That's what kids do.
When we cycled through South Africa together, and I just brought the T-shirt down that I bought. And, Ubuntu, and I'm giving it to Max because I bought it as an extra large, and I'm probably extra large. So Max, you can have
Big
that.
Tim.
So tell me about Ubuntu.
So Ubuntu, I'm not that precise in my description of it, but the way I look at it is humanity and being part of a community where individuals are strong and the community is strong because of the all the individuals, and we're strong together.
And we were chatting about that earlier on, and saying that it's a oneness that isn't isolating. So you're not lonely. You're it's part of wholeness, and it's empowering really to be part of a community.
Yeah, it's totally inclusive.
Yeah,
and it's there. Everyone supports everyone.
Yeah.
So that's it. Yeah.
So when did Buddhism become important, or how did you even how did you go along that line?
It's funny that you mentioned my childhood, because I only got interested in Buddhism in my early 30s. However, it goes back to that time and place when I was playing with the kids, us as kids, and the Indian suburb was on the other side of the hill, and I remember I wasn't allowed to go anywhere because there was this huge main road with trucks crossing, and our parents said, "You don't go across that road, it's too dangerous." Of course I did. How many times I did. And I used to love going to the Indian suburb because everyone was walking around, and the ladies in their saris and their little red dots on their forehead, and the incense burning and the bright colours. It was almost like being in India. And I loved that. But I also was intrigued by all these thousands and thousands of Hindu gods and their reverence and their spirituality, which is very different to the Catholic spirituality that I was brought up in. And I just felt that there was a dimension there that I needed to know more about. And I kind of put it aside. But then when I became an adult, I just found that Christianity wasn't working for me, and then also being a gay man and supposedly a Catholic, I felt rejected by my faith. And when we moved back to Italy, I felt even more rejection by the Catholic Church. And not that that's the reason why I delved into other religions, but it just wasn't working for me, and so move on. And I I studied a few different other religions. I looked into Judaism and Islam as well. I wanted to get to know what this is all about, and Hinduism, and then Buddhism came up. And cut long story short, a cousin of mine in Italy, very close to me, has always had really serious anxiety problems, panic attacks, everything. And I hadn't seen him for about a year. And I'd moved to London by then. I went to visit him in Italy, and I couldn't believe that he'd transformed his life so much. And I asked him, "What's happened? You're so positive, and where is that sarcastic pessimism that where is it gone?" And he said, "No, well, I've just realized a lot of things about myself, and that I can be a much better person and more used to society." And I said, "Oh, okay, how?" And he said, "Well, I've learnt about Buddhism." And so I said, "Okay, fine, tell me more about this." So that's how.
Oh, brilliant!
That's how it started. Yeah.
How did it change, or how has it changed your life, or how are you a different person now compared to back then?
It's made me understand about appreciating what you've got, being grateful for absolutely everything in life, and thankfulness, mindfulness, thinking about what are the effects of this action that I'm about to take. Is it going to affect anyone else in a negative way, perhaps? Should I perhaps think about twice and maybe do something else instead? But most of all, it's given me a huge sense of optimism and hope. Yeah.
It comes across, and everybody who knows you will always say, "Oh, Max, he's lovely, great guy." How do you feel it's changed? Max works as the flight service manager on board Virgin Planes, and we've worked together for many years. But how do you think that Buddhism or the approach to life has changed your approach to work?
Of course, and this might sound strange, I'm really grateful for my job, for having a job, and it affords me to live where I live. The usual thing. It sustains your life, and also I appreciate my colleagues. I appreciate my customers. Everything. The sense of appreciation really makes you understand things in a different way, but at the same time, it doesn't make. I was worried about this. I thought when I first heard about Buddhism, couldn't it perhaps make me become like a doormat if I'm always thankful? Thank you, thank you, thank you. But what about when things don't really work out, or when you're not happy?
Absolutely.
But actually, no. It's actually made me become a lot more self-confident, and understand that if I feel something, I have to express it. But then again, the Buddhist way of thinking kicks in, and you think, well, if I have to express myself, I have to express myself in a way that whoever I'm interacting with understands how I feel, and then I don't just throw all this huge cloak of anger onto them. It's not constructive.
And if you're dealing with somebody on board who is being angry and being obstructive and being rude, and we've seen them, we've heard about them in the press recently, how do you handle that? Or do you feel that that your Buddhism helps you manage that better than beforehand? And how would that guy recognise that, oh, there's something nice about this guy and I shouldn't be such a twit?
Well, it's a work in progress.
Yeah.
And as a Buddhist, I've learned that we all have this innate potential to be the best that we can ever be. And I think what I've learned is that most people don't believe that they have this fantastic potential. So when I'm faced with someone who is giving me hell, part of me would want to react and give them hell back. But what's the use of that?
Absolutely.
Is it going to help anyone? It just makes things worse. So I will try to diffuse the situation and really try to understand, because a lot of the time people are angry because it comes from fear. Maybe fear of the situation that they feel I'm in no control of, and I don't know what to do, so they panic and this and that and the other. And many times just making them understand that I can take ownership of the particular situation that they're facing can really take the edge off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were talking earlier on about the power of the big deep breath, count to 10,
Oh, yes.
stretch out and loosen up, and when you're encountering that, and it just gives you, I sometimes call it my mental hold on a minute, mental, just a little gap.
Can you go through it again with me, please?
So
'Cause
basically,
I love it.
So that was almost a cue, Max. Well done.
Oh, thank you.
I hadn't written that bit down, but.
But I have to be reminded of things, then I remember them.
Oh, okay. But no, basically what my theory is that we've got a vicious circle of anxiety, of anger, and when you said about the anger, that's what made me start to think about it. Somebody's angry, they're frightened. So whether it be anger, fear, anxiety, they're all negative, and they're all positively negative. There's actually a physiological reason why they're negative. They create more adrenaline, create more cortisol, and I've said in a previous podcast, there's some of the neuroendocrine hormones that I don't even know what their name is, but it is this struggle from the autonomic nervous system, the automatic nervous system, and your brain trying to make sense of that. And so a big deep breath actually slows the rapid breathing that you have as you're getting more panicky and more, counting to 10 actually makes you concentrate almost. It's a bit of mindfulness. So for that time, I don't like saying, you have to be mindful in that time, as in, spend 10 minutes being mindful. You can't. It's a 5 second thing. It's 5 seconds to count to 10. But that big deep breath and just stretching out and loosening up, and that makes your body feel more relaxed than it really is feeling in that situation. And it gives you time to react in a different way. So that, again, if the vicious circle's spinning round, I always say it's a bit like a merry-go-round that you would be running into, one of those wheels that we'd run and jump onto as a kid. As it got faster and faster, you would either be thrown off it or trying to get onto it, you get whipped off, and people were breaking their wrists coming off those things.
Yes.
So as you slow the power of that vicious circle, you and understand that people have that vicious circle, that they're reacting in a certain way, in a knee-jerk way, in a primitive way, reacting with aggression.
Yeah.
So their fear is becoming aggression. When you realise that, it makes you less inclined to react to them as well. So the big deep breath and count to 10 is convincing you that you're more calm to yourself.
Yeah.
It also gives you that little bit more emotional resilience to deal with whatever's coming towards you.
Yeah, so I think it's that animalistic thing.
Yeah.
That when you recognise it, and when I recognise it in somebody else, I automatically, it's really weird, but there's almost a feeling of compassion, because I feel that poor guy or gal, they can't control how they're behaving. Yeah. It's kind of taken over.
And it is animal, and it's in us all. With the autonomic nervous system is the nervous system that makes us poo, makes us pee, makes our heart go faster or slower. And so I can't tell you to tell your adrenal glands to slow down a little bit, but we can use those sort of negative feedback. I call them a positive negative feedback, and you're convincing your body that you're more relaxed than you actually are. Yeah. So that's my theory on it. Anyway.
It really feeds in very well to this. We were also talking about your brain and the prefrontal cortex and the limbic and all this, the interactions and the conflicts between them. But there's just so much science that is coming out nowadays that no one knew about, and there's so much research also going on with regards to mindfulness and positivity, and being ever the optimist is not necessarily a sign of weakness or a sign of putting your head under the sand, but actually it's got sound health principles.
Yeah.
Will really can make you healthier, can make you do things that you never thought you could with your body, that actually you can do.
Absolutely, because fear paralyzes, fear stops you doing these things, and when you understand the physiological stuff that's going on, when you understand that feeling of that anxiety in the pit of your stomach when you're sitting in an exam situation,
Horrible.
Yeah. You know, when you understand that, you can take a deep breath and you can say, I know why I'm feeling the way I am. Even if it's a loss, even if somebody's died or there's something awful happening, and you're going, well, why am I feeling like this? Well, it's fairly obvious why. And actually, I'm not going mad, and actually, it's understandable why I feel the way I do. And even just being able to discuss that with yourself, and on the optimistic side, or being on the optimism side rather than the pessimism side, it is glass half full. And if you've got a glass that's half full, you've actually got a lot more reserve than if you're half empty. You know, you've got a lot more reserve in your emotional intelligence, your emotional strength and resilience. Yeah.
So even if you got that last drop left, you still think, I still got a last drop.
Yeah, and you'll never get to the last drop.
You won't.
So you don't need to worry about it.
That's it, isn't it?
So,
because we tend to worry about worst case scenario. Catastrophizing. And I think Western world is very good at doing that because I recognize it within myself. I think, well, if I think of the worst case scenario, then I'll be happily surprised if it works out better than the worst case scenario.
Yes.
But actually, what a difficult way of life that is, and what it takes so much effort. It fills your life with sadness.
Yes.
You know, and this, in a way, is how I was before I started practicing Buddhism, because I felt, we run out of oil. Just can you imagine? We've run out, and I was in my 20s. We've run out of oil. The world's environmental situation is terrible. We're not going to last another 10 years. So what's the use? Mm-hmm. And I was thinking like this in the 80s, the late 80s. Mm. So I'm now 53.
About that in the late 70s.
So there you go. You see. And it's that catastrophizing. Yeah. And I wasn't a happy bunny unless I was going clubbing, but that was a different kind of thing. I was very happy then, But again, the Buddhist thing and is it's very important for me because we don't really have many rules, but it's a very modern type of Buddhism. And I could sit here for a whole day and talk to you about the history of Buddhism. It's very vast. But we've kind of whittled things down to make them efficient for the 21st century. Because we can't sit in a monastery and chant all day, hopefully doing this for the betterment of the world. We've got to take action. So we do chant a little bit. In the morning and in the evening is preferable. So you start your day and then you also conclude your day. And the chanting is done with the eyes open. So we're constantly aware of ourselves and our life. So we don't sort of withdraw into somewhere. There's no escapism there. And this phrase that we chant is, I think you might have seen Tina Turner's film or her show on in London. It's Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and it sounds very esoteric and mysterious. What the hell is he chanting? But actually it just means I live my life based on the wonderful law of cause and effect. So it's really easy. So if I'm chanting, if I'm
it's probably
repeating
better to
that
say
to
it the
myself,
way you said it first than that.
yes, I live my life based on the wonderful law of cause and effect, and instead I say Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and it's just a nice way of getting your blood oxygenated, your brain wide awake, and knowing that you're chanting something that's not mysterious, and it's just very basic. And I'm always thinking of what effect I'm going to have. Let me get that right. I am always aware of whatever cause I'm going to make, whatever I'm going to do, what is the effect going to be?
Mike, so I said earlier on about us, meeting. Well, I'd met you at work, but really getting to know each other on some of the charity trips that we've done together, and certainly they've enriched my life and Jackie's life, and we've been to some wonderful places and seen some sites that are amazing and some that are really distressing. And bring home why we're raising money for a particular community that we go to, and how the money's being spent, etc. But what do you get from the charity trips? What whenever we go cycling in South Africa or India?
I get so much. I get so much out of it. Firstly, the camaraderie of the group.
Yes.
And I'm a bit like a butterfly, so whenever we're in these groups, I flit around and I speak to this person and go that one, and I just love it. Yes. It's just great, that in itself. And then doing whatever it is, whether we're hiking or cycling or mountain biking, pushing my own boundaries. I mean, I never in my wildest dreams imagined that I'd be getting on a bicycle for charity in my late 40s. It just didn't enter my mind. And then a colleague of ours said to him, Max, you've got to do it, you're going to love it, it's going to do something for you, I don't know what it's going to do.
Was that the lovely Linda?
It was the lovely Linda, yeah. And her conviction really struck something deep down inside me, and I thought, if Linda sees this in me and she's done this, then I have to do it. And she was so right. Yeah. She really was.
And I've said to people that the friendships that you build in those times, you're really, really close. At times like that, it sounds really crude, but the first charity trip I ever did was for the Samaritans in 2003, and Jackie and we cycled along the Nile. But there were a few people that we met there that we're really still very friends with, because literally, if you're having diarrhea together in the middle of the desert, it's the wrong thing to say. It cements friendships. But what I'm saying is, you're exposed. You're and you support each other, and it's that team it's the team bit that really, when we're out there, we're looking after each other, and so whoever the tail end Charlie will support everybody, and I get wonderful personal gain from it, but also there is a spiritual gain from it.
Definitely.
And we did learn about the Ubuntu, and we did and cycling through South Africa, and it just was such a education, as in giving you information, but giving you more information about yourself than you ever thought you needed to know. You wasn't meant. You didn't realise it was missing until you got it.
You didn't expect to find out certain things, but also the amazing thing is that when we've done these events, we don't do the tourist beaten path kind of thing. We go into the really dire places. In Rajasthan, whenever I speak to people who have been to India and to Rajasthan, they ask me, "Oh, did you go here?" No, I didn't actually. I went the worst, down and out. I don't want to use the word worst in a derogatory way, but these people are the ones that have been rejected by the lowest castes in India, and we're doing this for them. But we're not. It's not a handout. The charity exists to be there so that if they need anything, they can ask for support. Yeah. And when they do ask for support, it's not given to them on, here you go. It's, let's see how we can change the way you do things. Yeah, so helping them help themselves.
It is, and I was on one one of the trips, and I'll not say which country it was in, and it was with the trustees of the of the charity.
Yes.
So the trustees of the Virgin charity, where all the money comes from, and your money on board the plane goes to we. And if you've ever been on a Virgin flight, you'll see the videos of what we've done with the money, or what Virgin have done with the money. But I was privileged enough to go along and see, the things that needed done. And I saw a hospital that maybe needed beds, and we looked at it and we said, well, actually, I could bring beds over from the UK to chat to friends who are hospital managers. But actually, all we really need in there, and this is what the charity said, we just need clean sheets. We just need to have something that we need to educate. And exactly. the real common sense things is what's needed. You don't need, emergency operation suites, or you may need them somewhere, but for the vast majority of people, it's the simple things and educating, and that was a real privilege for me to look and see what needed done, and actually come back to the charity and to the trustees and say, look, actually, that charity, I think, have really got it tapped. They know where the money needs to be spent, and like you said, it's not just some glossy thing. In fact, it's definitely not glossy, and it may not even be the whole answer. It's a part of the answer, so that they have to work and build it themselves. Otherwise, I've seen other charity situations in life where perhaps a lovely glossy thing has been built and it's not being used.
Well,
so what's the point?
Me too. I've seen a lot of examples like that.
Yeah.
I support a very small charity in South Africa. They provide blankets and beanie hats to AIDS orphans, but not in the city centres, in the most remote little villages where the big charities can't get to. And they only have one little pickup truck, and every week or so they'll go out, and you could give them money, you could give them this and that, but actually they just want beanie hats and they want blankets. That's all they want. Nothing else.
You mentioned a minute ago there, Max, about the turning around the words that you were using, or not reacting. That was what we were talking about. And I have a big theory that the power of the words that we use to others and to ourselves, in itself, a bit like I was explaining earlier on about the impact of your thoughts and the adrenaline. But the words that we use, and the way we use them, and the way we speak. So if we use a word like that's horrendous, or that is killing me, or that is terrible. And terrible, to me, I look at the word and I break it down. I used to do Latin, and break it down. You look at the terror, and so are we really terrorized by it? Is it really, sadly in this world we know what terrorism truly is, and we've got a mark for that.
Yeah.
So things, when we say they're terrible, I think we shouldn't use the word lightly, and B, I think that people should, in the same way as we mentioned earlier about looking at the physiology of what a fear does or an anxiety does, the words, the impact on that person. If I say to you, Max, pull yourself together, snap out of it, don't be so stupid. I really, I don't hate many things, but I hate the word stupid, because it's such an insult, and it immediately creates a reaction inside the other person that is automatically negative, even if they don't react back to you. It's a negative thing such a negative thing to say to people. So it's a bit like we were talking about the mindfulness of the words you use and your reaction to people. So
definitely. It's really important, because you have to always... okay, I'm going to go back to Buddhism. I learned this studying Shakyamuni, the big Buddha that we always see, big fat one. Shakyamuni was the guy that was enlightened to cause and effect, and went around India learning about life and talking about what he'd learned. And as he did that, he would speak to whoever was listening But one thing he always did was he always tried to measure his audience, tried to understand their level of understanding on anything, and then he would talk in their way so that they would understand properly. And again, that goes back to using the right words and being mindful of the words that you use. There is a kind of a strange example. In Italian, when like in English you say stupid, we don't really use stupido that much, but we say deficiente, which means deficient officially, but deficiente means a stupid guy, deficient in intelligence, so you're thick kind of thing. And when I first visited Brazil a few years ago, I couldn't believe it, because I was in a parking lot and there was a parking space for deficientes, for deficienti, and I thought to myself, I kind of laughed and thought, for stupid people. And then I thought to myself, Max, what the hell are you saying? And I asked my sister, she was living there, what does it mean? And she said it's for people who are deficient in whatever it might be. So it means disabled, yes. But it just shows you how we can alter the meaning of words to entertain us or to insult people, or and sometimes you might not even think about the fact that you could be hurting someone by the choice of words.
And I often tell people to actually think about the words you're using to themselves. So, you would say, if I go back to that example, if you say, don't be so stupid, pull yourself together, it's usually that it's you saying that to yourself.
It's true.
And so it's about taking that and going, well, if I wouldn't say that to Max, I'm not going to say it to myself. So if I'm not going to, insult somebody in that way, it's even more important that I look after myself and don't do that. So you use kinder words to yourself. Use words that have less negative impact, and they, and I'm not saying be airy fairy and say, oh, I'm the best in the world at this, or I'm the most amazing. You're not the most. You probably are the most amazing FSM, but no, you're not, because a lot of my friends will be listening and going, "Excuse me, Tim, it's me." But it's not.
They're all amazing.
I know. But you're maybe not the best. You're definitely not the worst. And the same as cabin crew or pilots. A lot of people will just doubt who they are in those negative times.
Good point.
You'll really question. Something will have happened. Somebody will have been. If we're talking about customer service, and your situation as the flight service manager, it really is such a safety critical place as well. And a lot of people don't realise on a plane that cabin crew, everybody. Another word that annoys me is trolley dolly.
Yeah.
Those sorts of situations. And when you and I have done our training, or we've attended emergency situations, you realise just how important the cabin crew and the FSM are in the safety of that plane. And yes, the pilot's the one that maybe gets the recognition because they're guiding that plane down, but there's other situations where the control inside the cabin is crucial to the safety of that flight.
That's it, yeah.
So I'm thinking about some of the more junior people that would be having to deal with some of the in-your-face insults, and those really, it's almost painful to think of some of the things that people say to friends of ours.
Well, I've got two little mind tools that I explain to my crew, and they're quite amusing, but it works. And some of them have actually come back to me at the end of a flight and said, you said that. Actually, I thought about it, and it made it so much better and easier. So the one thing is your karmic washing machine. Okay, so somebody comes up to you with whatever problem they've got, anger and this and that, and so you grab whatever it is that they're giving you, and you swallow it into your tummy. Your tummy becomes a karmic washing machine, and you wash it, and you clean it, and you represent it and give it back to them. So just the thought of making yourself feel as if you're part of the solution.
And understanding their problem.
Exactly.
So you're taking in, that's a really good example, because you're taking it in. You're not necessarily having the same taste as it comes through.
Yeah.
Or the same experience.
Yeah.
But your understanding of their experience probably is greater.
Yeah.
Than if you haven't bothered to take it in.
Yeah. And you can sort of psychologically put your arm around that person's shoulder and say, we can sort this out together.
Yeah.
The kind of thing. The other one is quite similar, but it involves hooks and a cloak of anger. So, if you look at anger as a big cloak or a coat, and somebody's very angry, and they're so angry, and they just got to get rid of this anger, so what do? They start looking for people with the big coat hook on their forehead. Okay. And the first person that they see with the hook on their forehead, they quickly remove their cloak of anger and put it on your hook. So they've transferred the anger to you, and then you become this, and it becomes like a war. And then there's two people with anger, or maybe they've got rid of their anger, but maybe they haven't even. And then you start looking for somebody with the hook, and it's terrible. And so what I say to my friends is just don't have a hook on your forehead. So if they come to you with this cloak of anger, it's just going to fall to the floor.
Very good. Yeah.
So that sometimes can, just again, visualization is a very powerful thing.
Yeah. And
if you can think of it in that way, that certainly has helped me a lot in my years.
And I think, the visualization of the physiology as well, when we think of when we've got time to think of the theory about it, so in your situations there, that's really good. You've got to have something that works in that split second. There's no point you giving me a call and saying, Tim, how did you say to experience that and feel that? But it is useful when you're reflecting on it. Yeah. To see, well, actually, that really did, get me at the pit of my stomach, or the physiological, the real innate feelings and that we encounter, and being mindful of those. So what you're, and when you're learning mindfulness, you're thinking about what your body's feeling at the time that you're thinking about that part of the body, or what you're encountering in that room. There's a plane going over our head at the minute. It's part of us being here. We're in Gatwick flight path, so it's not the end of the world. It's not interfering with anything. So it's about just understanding where you are at that time, and understanding that physiology, understanding that that's why I feel the way I do.
So what I was thinking also is that as you go through life, you learn so much, and in a way, I'm not sure if it's the right word, but you try to transform your life to be happier, because that's essentially what most 99% of the population want to be happy, whatever that might mean. But yeah, you want to love, and you want to be loved, and so why not become a better person? So I think it's really great that you can have tools like mindfulness, and if it can be chanting that can help you, why not? But these are all things that make you see the other person's point of view, and if number one is okay, then you can be a lot more effective to the people around you. Yeah. The community is really important and needs more people like that. So I think we also have a responsibility in the bigger picture to let's lift humanity in that way, and encourage each other. So in our Buddhist organization, it's a very modern socially engaged Buddhism, and we don't have monks or nuns or temples as such. We have community centers and things like that, and then we have leaders who are basically responsible in their geographic area to support local Buddhists, and I'm a leader in North London, Northwest London, and I was when they asked me if I would mind to take on this responsibility, I was so scared. I thought, what do I know that I can support other people in that way? And then I thought, well, I kind of do that in my job anyway, but that's different. And then senior leader said to me, don't worry, you are just there to encourage, support, and if you can, also inspire people. That's what a leader's job is about. So, and then he said, and the plan is that every single person becomes a leader. And if they, start with yourself, use the encourage, support, and inspire yourself, and then it radiates outwards.
Yeah.
So when I heard that, then I thought, wow, this is really a huge value creating.
It's not exactly the same principle, but as you were talking there, I was thinking about whenever I was a student, I used to teach sailing, and there was 1 or 2 days I would take children out to people from Belfast who had never seen the sea, and we take them out to an island, give them a picnic on the island, and then bring them back again. And these islands were only 4 or 5 miles away, about an hour and a half to sail to. And I remember one of the old chaps saying to me, Tim, you get into that water, you jump in there, you lift those kids off. Next time I want you to get one of the kids to jump into the water and pull the boat up the beach. I want you to keep your feet dry. Because when we're sailing back, he said, if things start to go wrong, you're the skipper. None of them have any idea how to handle this or how to do anything. And so if one of the chap that has gone over is cold, you'd get him up under the bow, you'd have him wrapped in sails and get them singing songs, and they would be having a lovely time. You'll be able to concentrate and help the way you have to help. Yeah. So there's a lot of things like that where sometimes we think we've got to run ourselves into the ground, or that we don't count, and we do count, and actually it's important that we're strong to be able to help as well. Yeah. So personal strength and personal recognition of strength. So we can often, as a doctor, I'm great at helping other people. Sometimes it's difficult to stop and think, right, how do I need to rebalance this for myself? So, in life, for people, I think it's important that they look after themselves as well. They respect themselves, that if they're going to be of any use to anyone else, they've got to be good to themselves.
I don't know why I'm thinking of psychological triage. It kind of, I just thought, maybe the fact of prioritizing the importance of stuff inside you as well.
Oh, absolutely, and it is about the big deep breath and count to 10. That's where you, going back to that, people will get sick of hearing me saying this, but it helps you prioritize. By the time your big deep breath, you count to 10, you stretch out, you're loosening up, and in that count to 10, by the time you get to 3 or 4, you've stopped thinking that the world's going to end, or you stopped thinking that this panic is because something dreadful's going to happen, and then the next few seconds you're actually thinking, well, how do I deal with? And by the time you get to 9 or 10, you've usually found a solution to it, or you've felt that it's not going to be the end of the world if something happens, or that negative thing that seems so catastrophic, back to catastrophizing, that negative thing doesn't necessarily have that massive negative impact, and therefore the fear that you've had avoiding it, or the fear you've had worrying about it happening, is all wasted. It's all wasted emotion.
And how much do we waste? Worrying and worrying and worrying. And in fact, that's another thing I learned about Buddhism, and really was so happy to hear this, because I was worrying about something, and I was at my cousin's, the one who introduced me, and he said, "What are you worrying about? Why are you worrying so much about this? I'm going to tell you something that's going to really help you." And I said, "Oh, please do." Worrying, in Buddhist terms, and he made it sound so official, worrying in Buddhist terms is creating bad karma. So if you are worrying, you're actually making yourself suffer, and you shouldn't be doing that, because if karma is the effect. So you shouldn't be making negative causes, and because you're going to get negative effects.
Yeah.
And I said, well, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. So he was being tough on you. Maybe if he had listened to us, he would think of a different way of doing it. Yeah. He might not have been such with it. But having said that, he got the message across.
And he knows me very well.
Ah, right, okay.
And sometimes I need the maniere forti, we say in Italian.
The hard hand.
Hard hand, yeah. To get.
Yeah, sometimes it's important to give someone a shake and say, "Come on now."
But you
look
do it lovingly.
Look at where we are at the minute. We've got to look at this in a different way. We can't go on going round in circles about this. Let's take a stop for a minute. Take a deep breath, count to 10, whatever we want to, whatever way we want to say about looking at it in a different way. There's a thing called cognitive restructuring, where you take the things that are happening and their effect on you, and you look at them in a different way. So I'll say people to challenge the thoughts that they have, to actually rationalise them and say, well, actually, I see why I'm worrying about that, but I don't need to worry about that.
Exactly.
Or if we've lost someone, change it from torture to just sadness. Yeah. Just accept that you don't have to run around in life with this torture. Sometimes whenever I will lie awake at night worrying about things, once you've sorted out number 19 of the things you're worrying about, you think, better start to think about number 20 or 21, even though I'm not sure what 20 or 21 is at the minute. I should be worried about something, because I'm always a worrier. So just breaking those things down and actually saying, right, well, okay, actually I don't, and I use mindfulness now if I'm all awake and like that at sleep at night, where I'll lie and I'll get my body in a relaxed situation. And if negative things or even worries or things that I need to do the next day come in, I'll let them go straight through. And sometimes if you'll often say, well, what would happen if? I don't even finish that sentence sometimes. And I just let the if, or what would happen if X, I don't even bother saying turn to Y. It doesn't matter. You'll sort it out in the morning. Cold light of day will sort things out. So I don't know how from a textbook point of view this mindfulness is, but from my point of view it really works, and I'm able to not switch off, but realise that I don't need to be activating my brain. So lie in bed and wait for sleep to come to you, rather than getting anxious or annoyed that you're not sleeping. Yeah. Lie there and let your body have that knowledge that you're physically resting, and that you actually, even though there's no point saying, oh, well, I'm going to be up in 3 hours and put the light on to see what time it is. Doesn't matter. If you put if you think, I've got to be up in 3 hours, imagine as if you woke with your alarm at 7 in the morning, and you were allowed to lie in until 10. So the same if you're waking at 4 in the morning, say, oh, fantastic, I've got another 3 hours in bed. So it is just about cognitive restructuring, about just turning it around. It's not telling yourself a lie, but like earlier on, we're not necessarily the best cook in the world or the best parent in the world or whatever, but we're not the worst. And just actually don't allow yourself to get sucked into that criticising yourself or telling yourself off or pull yourself together, going back to those negative words again.
I like what you said about there might not be any theories to prove this, but this is what I do, blah blah blah. And I think more often than not also it's really important to understand that if it works for you, you don't need the theory. You don't need the proof. Exactly. I mean, the proof is in the pudding, Sometimes, it just... which is great.
Well, earlier on I was talking about the power of words and the link in the brain and the release of which hormone it was. And when I was thinking about doing the podcast about the power of words, I was getting hung up on what that hormone might be. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter whether it's,
Yeah. We know
X,
that
Y,
there's a
Z.
hormone.
or that it may not even be a hormone. It may just be like a sodium channel that allows X to happen, some synapses to fire off, the brain.
Yeah.
So it isn't actually, as you say, for me, it isn't important. It's important that somebody's looking at these things and understanding where the science comes from.
Yeah.
We don't have to be precise about it.
Mm-hmm.
We have to. We don't. I don't want to say that we should just say anything can happen because anything can happen, but I'm just saying that we don't have to understand it in perfect theory to put it into practice.
Yeah.
I was just talking about the different slant on life, and you were saying what is my slant on life? I mean, I think your slant on life, wherever that group of words came from, is what you spoke about earlier about your approach to Buddhism and the being measured in the way you react to people and looking for the good in people. And I'll another thing with the healthy company and in healthy company, and I'm wanting to get across to people that community and being, we're sitting here chatting and we've had, we've switched the microphone off and on and chatted away and said, well, people won't want it, but it's just being in a healthy community or being in a healthy group of people just enriches people's wellness. And so looking at your slant on life is you being the best that you can be in your contribution to society.
Yeah, I like that. And I find that in any given situation in which I find myself, it sometimes it could be a kind of a negative situation or whatever it might be. I'm always trying to see what can I learn from this. What good can come out of this. It's this thing about the muddy pond, the dirty, muddy, stagnant pond. Well, from that is a really important thing, because from that grows this beautiful lotus flower.
Yes.
And if you threw a lotus seed into pure water, it wouldn't grow, or it might, but it will die very quickly. It needs, so similarly, from whatever situation you find yourself, you have the potential to transform it into the most beautiful thing.
The other thing that reminds me of is enjoying the journey.
Yes, you have to.
And appreciating the journey.
Yeah.
So much of my time in my life has been running around thinking that yes, I've been really busy in the jobs that I've done, and you're thinking about the next thing and thinking about, right, what do I need to do? How do I need to cover that off? And multiple things that you're thinking of at one time.
Yeah. But
it's also important that going back to that deep breath and sitting in that moment and enjoying the journey. And that's why some of our charity trips are just amazing. But also, some of you literally fly all over the world.
Yeah.
And we sometimes have to pinch ourselves to say, how privileged are we? And what, okay, it's a job and there can be negative aspects to it. But the vast majority of the time we're in a really privileged situation.
Definitely.
And that's less metaphorical about the journey. That there is a journey that you can physically enjoy there, but I'm talking about the metaphorical, enjoying the journey of life, and each bit of it.
Yeah.
Each bit of it is not necessarily about worrying about what you've done, what you haven't done, or what you shouldn't have done, or what you should have done, and what you need to do in the future. Sometimes it's just about, look, it's, wake up, smell the coffee, but actually smell the flower, smell the jasmine, smell the spring that's in our garden at the minute.
Yeah.
And just enjoy those noises. Stop, wait for a minute, listen to that. We were cycling on the downs this morning, and I could hear the skylarks. I think they're called skylarks, but they're the beautiful whistling birds that, you know, and it just stand for a minute and appreciate where you are. Yeah. And a lot of the angst, the stress, the spark, the noise, the waves of the stress bucket, you know, they just settle down. Yeah. But you know, it's enriching to enjoy the journey.
I got this image in my head as you were talking about enjoying the journey of the time that we were going through. We were on day 5 or day 6 of the Rajasthan cycle ride in northern India, and we'd been through all those deserts and the arid landscapes and camels walking around, and then all of a sudden we're going through these beautiful hills. Those mountains are older than the Himalayas, the Aravalli Hills, and I was not swearing like it, but I was up another hill, you know, and I was so tired, and you and Jackie as well. We were all kind of, and I remember, I think it must have been Jackie that stopped and turned around, and she said, "Oh my gosh, just let's all stop and look behind us." Yes. And we turned around, and the view was just amazing, because we'd gone up all these hills, and behind us was this huge valley, and the greenery was incredible.
And we could have missed that. We could have missed that
just by being miserable and continuing to swear all the way up the hill. And there's another hill to climb, you know. But, enjoying it.
There was a young chap, and I must try and get hold of him. He was a runner. Used to work at Brighton and Hove Albion with us, and I think he was in Albion in the community, and he did this run. It was hundreds of miles. It was in India, I think. And at the end of it, there was the sea, and he was talking about the you know, he could have said, "Oh gosh, I can't wait to get to that sea," and he found that was too negative, and he actually turned it around to saying, look at this journey, and every bit of that journey, every step of that way was something that he was embracing. And you know, I spoke to Dee Kafari, who sailed around the world, and she spoke about enjoying important when you're doing all this stuff, to enjoy the journey. And I sail, and there's times that you're out there and you realise there's a situation here that no one else has ever seen, because it's the particular swell of the waves, or the sun going down in a particular way, or whatever. And it's just really about taking that deep breath and enjoying the journey, physically and metaphorically.
I like to think of these moments as they're all these little gems and treasures of your life that every once in a while you can look back on and say, "Oh my, I did this," or "I remember this particular moment, and I remember how this person made me feel so happy or wonderful." And isn't that amazing that we can do this?
And I think we tend to lose a lot of that by spending our time looking at our iPhones, trying to get the picture of that.
Of course, yeah.
But the mental image that is there, that picture that's in your brain, that picture of that valley, you've described it perfectly.
You remember
I remember it.
Yes.
I remember it. And there's bits of that I remember. I can remember the smell of the dust. You know, so it's getting, it's appreciating every aspect of an existence, of an experience, or an existence, and you're smelling it, you can taste it, and sometimes some of the things that we've gone through and some of those challenges aren't the best, but it just triggers that memory and that being in that time, and how fulfilling they are and educational. I'm going around in circles using words like education, fulfilling, but
you're right. Yeah. Because again, this is the university of life, isn't it? We're all learning stuff constantly.
Well, Max, I've learned a lot from you today. It's been lovely.
I've learned so much from you.
Oh no, it's just great. And when we spoke about this, we wondered how long it would take us to switch it off, because we love talking to each other.
Yeah, we do, don't we?
So anyway, Max, thank you very much for
being
in healthy company with me.
Yes, Cheers. It's been wonderful. Thanks,
Max. What a lovely guy Max is. I know I probably said it 2, 3, 4 times in the interview, but he's just the sort of lovely person you'd love to have round for supper and have a chat with. And his outlook on life is eternally positive, and there are a lot of good things to think on whenever we look at what he spoke about there. I really enjoyed it and I hope you found it useful. Thanks again for being in healthy company with Dr. Tim. You can find out much more at my website, thehealthycompany.com. If there are any areas of health and well-being that you would like us to explore in future podcasts, or you have any feedback, then please do email me at wellbeing@thehealthycompany.com. Thanks for listening and see you next time.